Alright, so for the past couple of projects, I've been using just the iPad for my entire tethering workflow. And now I can pretty confidently say that you can use just your iPad when doing high-end product shoots. And in this video, I'm going to break down my entire process of how I am using the iPad, especially with Nikon cameras like the Z9 and D850 to get the best results out of it. So I'll talk about the hardware, that is all the components that I'm using to put together this tethering setup. I'll talk about the best camera settings to get the highest image quality at a very optimal file size saved right on your iPad and at the same time having a high speed tethering experience. Then of course I'll cover the best app for tethering, which is Capture One. It is the industry standard, and I'll show you how exactly I'm using Capture One on the iPad. And then the last two, but the most important points, I'll talk about how I'm taking simultaneous backup and in fact creating three simultaneous backups during the tethering process so that there is no chance of losing any data, which is very important when you're doing commercial shoots. And then the last and the most important bit, how exactly I'm taking advantage of the live view when I'm doing these high-end product shoots. So let's get started. So let's begin with the hardware first. Now in my case, I'm using the iPad Pro. And in fact, let me just give you the exact model detail. So this one is the iPad Pro 11 inches second generation and the capacity is 256 GB, right? I think that this iPad model is now almost 5 years old, but still I have no issues at all when using the iPad, for my tethering workflow. And the performance on this iPad Pro is absolutely top notch. Okay, so no complaints there. And for the case, I'm using this case from a brand called Spygen, जो भी बोलना है बोल लो. And I've also put these two Velcro patches here to fix the USB hub right onto the case. Okay, and I'm going to show you how exactly I'm using everything together in just a bit. Now let's move on to the next part, which is this metal bracket from the brand called Ulanzi for holding your iPad and fixing it on a, maybe a light stand or a tripod. Now this is a metal mount, a very high quality mount. It has a nice rubber padding to safely hold the iPad, and you can fix it on a tripod plate easily. You can also change the length of this mount. So depending on the iPad model that you're using, whether it is iPad mini, iPad Pro, iPad Air, or whatever it is, you can easily fix all sorts of iPad on this mount, and you can also fine tune it from the other end like this. Okay, so this mount is very solid, very nice and sturdy. And in fact, if you have an Arca Swiss compatible ball head or tripod head, then you can just use this Arca Swiss plate and fix it directly onto the tripod, right? So very versatile in the ways you can use this metal mount. I'm very happy with this one. Now let's look at the USB hub that I'm using, which is from the brand called Ugreen, and the model is Uno. Okay, it also has a digital screen right here which shows you what kind of connections you are having at any given time. The ports on this port are HDMI, the PD or the power delivery port. Now this port PD is very important because this is how you charge the iPad while it is doing tethering, right? The other ports on this hub are two USB-C ports and two USB-A. All of these ports are 10 gigabytes per second, so high-speed ports. Again, very happy with the USB hub. For the tethering cables, when I'm using the D850, I'm using this tethering cable from Tether Tools, which is pretty standard. You must have heard the name, okay, Tether Tools. And this cable is 10 feet long. I've never had a problem with this one. Very, works very efficiently and very nicely. When I'm using the Z9, I'm using a simple USB extension cable from Amazon Basics, right? So this one is a pretty, inexpensive, low-cost option, but this works equally well. There is no difference between using a USB extension cable from Amazon Basics and the Tether tool cable. I don't see any difference at all. And along with the USB extension cable, again, which is 10 feet, I'm using the standard cable that comes with Nikon Z9, this one for tethering, right? For charging the iPad, I'm using the again the standard cable that comes with the iPad, which is USB-C to USB-C. And for charging the iPad remotely, because I'll be fixing the iPad on a tripod or a light stand, so I want that light stand to be independent of any wired connections. So for charging the iPad, I use this power bank from the brand called Anchor. And in fact, let me just give you the exact model detail. So this one is the Power Core Essential 20,000 PD, right? I'll also link all the details in the description so you can find it very easily online, right? So this is the power bank, and this power bank also has the PD port, which is the power delivery port, right? So this is very important to have it on your power bank and your USB hub, because this is how you can charge the iPad simultaneously, right? Now moving on to the cameras, as I said, of course, I'm using the Nikon Z9 for tethering on my iPad. This is my primary camera body. And the second camera that I have is the Nikon D850. Again, a fantastic camera. I still use it for shooting both photos and videos, and it works, very nicely along with the iPad. All right, so let's move on to the next part. So when it comes to the camera settings, our goal here is to get the best image quality at a very optimal file size. So on the Z9, let's go on to the photo shooting menu. And here if you go down to image area, make sure that it is set to FX. Then image quality of course has to be raw. And when it comes to raw recording, so this is the most important setting here. This is where you will tell the camera to use the lossless compression, right? So these are the kind of compressions available in this camera. Make sure that it is set to lossless compression, because this is how you will get the best image quality at a compressed file size, right? And let me show you the difference between the Z9 and the D850 or the older DSLR cameras. So again, if I go to the photo shooting menu here, let's go down to the raw recording option, which is right here, NEF raw recording. In this option, you have two settings. Of course, set the bit depth to the highest available, which is 14 bit right here. And for the compression, there are three options. One is the uncompressed, compressed, and lossless compressed. So for a very long time, I was using the uncompressed, raw recording because I thought that this is the way to get the highest image quality. But whether you're using uncompressed or lossless compressed, the quality of image is exactly the same. And lossless compressed is the way to go, because this is how you will get the same highest image quality, but at the same time you will be saving a lot of space by compressing the data, right? So make sure any camera that you're using is set to the lossless compression, right? So now let's move on to the Capture One app on the iPad. Right, so I've put together a small setup just to give you guys a demo. Now, of course, I'm using two tripods here, one for the camera, another one for the iPad. And you can also use a light stand for the iPad, but just make sure that the light stand is also stable enough to support the weight of the iPad, right? Now, the camera is connected to the iPad via the USB cable that is going into the USB extension from Amazon Basics. This extension cable is connected to the iPad via the USB hub, which is connected to the iPad. And at the same time, I'm charging the iPad using the power bank right here. And the power bank is hung on to a carabiner on the tripod, right? And also you can see I'm using the same iPad mount, which is connected to the tripod plate like this. So this way the setup stays very stable and secure, and I can easily rotate it any which way as I want, right? Now let's have a look at the Capture One app on the iPad. But before that, let me also tell you that if you want this setup to work efficiently and flawlessly, you have to turn off one setting on the camera, which is, let's go into the menu right here. It is the USB power delivery. So make sure that the USB power delivery is set to off, right? Once you have done that, now we can have a look at the Capture One app on the iPad. So here you can see all the tabs on the left side, and then if you want to go to the camera, right here is the capture button, right? So again, one interesting thing, you can see that the iPad still has 1000 252 photos in it, and these are the photos from the previous project, and all of these photos are full size raw images, right? And in fact, let's go to the camera menu to see the remaining estimated storage. So it is showing here that estimated storage left is 1279 captures, right? So this is pretty incredible. I mean, I'm very comfortable with this, with the storage on the iPad, and when I'm using the raw photos for the shoot, right? Now, again on the tab, the first tab which says all images is going to show you all the images that are there on the iPad, whether it is from the tethered shoot or if you've imported some photos from the camera, those photos are going to show up in this tab. Then all captures is going to show you all the photos that you have shot in the tethering setup, right? All those photos are going to show up here. And of course, then if you delete some photos, it will end up in the trash. Then the import folders are right here. I don't use it, so let's minimize it. Then you see the connected camera, which is Z9, and then you have the albums here. So because let's say the shoot was of this product called Estria Dam Beer, so I have named the folder and I've assigned this folder as the capture folder. So let's say if you want to add another folder, you can add it right here. Let's call it whatever, test shoot. Okay, so test shoot and create. So once you have the folder right here, just make sure you assign this folder as the capture album. So assign capture album. So whatever photos I will shoot using the Z9 will end up in the test shoot folder. Okay, and you can see the icon right here. So it means that this folder is the assigned folder for the shoot, right? Now, one thing, if you look at the Z9 camera and you see these three dots here, if you tap here, you can access the settings in the camera. So you can change all the settings of the camera right from your iPad itself, right? So all the settings that I showed on the Z9, regarding the image file quality and the file size, you can also change those settings from this menu. Okay, so I'll just get out of this tab, and now let's move on to the camera control. So right here you will see, so because it is showing no photos, so let's take the first shot, and that photo comes here like this. Now of course you can also shoot from the iPad itself, right from this button, capture button. So I can shoot from this as well, and as you can see, the speed is, I mean, it's so fast. Let's have another look. There it is, right? So it is as fast as the speed that you'll get on a desktop with a full version Capture One app, right? Now again, on the left side we have various controls. When it comes to the camera settings, you can change the camera mode. Okay, of course we are shooting in the manual mode, and this is the way to go. You can change the aperture, the shutter speed, right? The ISO. Exposure compensation has nothing to do with the manual mode, but then you can change all of those settings here. And then comes a very important setting right here, which is destination, and here you can select how you're going to take the backup. So I have selected the second option, which says the raw photo is going to be saved on the iPad as well as the internal memory card on the camera, right? So this way I am getting two backups. But for getting the third backup, what I'll do is I'll go to the camera menu, and here let's go to the photo shooting menu. Here I can go on to the role played by card in slot 2 and make sure you have selected backup, right? So this way, when you're shooting, you are getting one copy is getting saved onto the iPad's memory. The second copy is getting saved onto the memory card in camera, and then the camera is duplicating that copy onto the second card. So this way you are getting three simultaneous backups when you're doing the shoot, right? So I mean, it makes sure that there is absolutely no way of losing any data, right? Now let's look at the other settings here. Of course, if you go to the second tab, I use this tab all the time because when you're shooting, you can assign these star ratings or the color codes right from this tab. So let's say if this is one of the photos that I like, and this is my final shot. So I will just go here and select the green tab right here. Okay. So this way, I have assigned a color code to this photo, so I know that this is one of my final shots or one of the shots in the compositing for the final shot, right? So this is the menu for that. Now let's move on to the next tab, which is for setting up the styles and preset. Basically, these are the filters that you can put on top of the photos, and I never use it. So let's move on to the next tab. Here you have the options for changing the rotation and keystoning. In the rotation tab, you can adjust the cropping factor. So as you can see, I have set it to 4 by 5, which is what you need for the photos to be used on Instagram. And you can change the cropping ratio right from here. As you can see, I have set it to 4 by 5. Right, so this I use all the time, and in fact there's one more setting which is very crucial. So this, what you see right here, means that whatever adjustments you do on this photo will be carried forward to the upcoming shots, right? So I've turned it on, and you can also turn it off. So let me just show you the example here. Let's go back to the camera tab and take a shot. So now the photo that comes doesn't have the crop on it, right? Because I have switched off the that setting, right? So let's go back. In fact, you can change it from here itself. So let's switch it on back again, right? And now if I go back to the menu and again change the cropping ratio for this one. So let's set it back to 4 by 5, and let's change the cropping ratio to vertical, and let's say that we are happy with this cropping ratio. Now when I take another shot, because since now the adjustment settings is turned on, so going back to the camera tab, if I take another shot, now you will see that automatically that crop is applied to the next shot, right? Let's go back to the same menu. So in this particular menu, I only use the cropping option, but you can also in fact rotate the photo, and you can automatically allow the iPad to automatically adjust the crop for that. I never use it. Now there are two more tabs here, one which has the settings to change the exposure, white balance and things like that. Of course I never do it on the iPad, because whatever changes I need to make, I make it in Photoshop, right? Then there is another tab where you can adjust the sharpening, noise reduction, film grain and more. Of course, if you want to do it, you can do it on the iPad, but in my case, I am not using any of these settings. All I use are two tabs. First one is of course the camera tab, and the second is the one for setting up the ratings and color tags, right? Now let's come to the most important setting, which I use all the time, and that's the reason why I prefer shooting on iPad when tethering. That is the live view, right? So you can access the live view from here, and once the live view is on, I just simply turn the iPad towards the set, so that when I'm setting up the composition, I'm playing around with the product on the set. At the same time, I can look at the iPad to adjust my composition very easily. Okay, once I'm happy with that, I can then set up the lights around the product, and as I'm lighting the product, I can see the result in the live view, right? So this is very helpful, because using the live view on the iPad this way, I can very precisely build a lighting setup that I'm happy with and then start shooting. Once I've built the lighting setup, I come back here and I turn the iPad towards me like this, and then I can start shooting, right? So I'll switch off the live view and I'll start taking the shots, right? So this way, I mean, the live view is very useful for shooting products. And another thing why I prefer using the iPad is also the touch screen, because once the photos are on the screen, it is so easy to just zoom in and check the details, move the shot around. It is so intuitive. The touchscreen experience is fantastic, and this is the reason why I prefer using the iPad so much when tethering for product shoots. Alright, so this is pretty much how I'm using the iPad for product shoots. Now, if you have any questions or if you know any better way, do let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.